Hey Summoners, welcome back to another Wild Rift video. My name is Tia and today we'll be going over our tier list for patch 2.0a. Remember, this tier list is a generalized list for the Wild Rift covering all levels of play. There's currently a lack of information and data available for the Wild Rift, so we're holding off on making tier lists specific to different levels of play for now. Anyways, let's get straight into the video.
Olaf has sprung up out of nowhere to become the king of the Baron lane. He's dominating the Rift almost every game and he's becoming an absolute force to be reckoned with. In Wild Rift games, the team with the better early game usually wins. Skirmishes are constantly happening and being able to walk to and win these skirmishes is what leads to the most victories. Olaf, as a champion, is concentrated early game power. His melee dueling is virtually unmatched, with his Undertow's powerful slow keeping you in range, while Reckless Swing chunks out your health bar. If you try and fight back but don't literally one-shot him, his Berserker's Rage and Vicious Swings combine wonderfully together to make him deal crazy DPS while healing through whatever damage you have left. Olaf can often 2v1 weaker Baron laners and junglers in the early game, and will often snowball into an unstoppable carry threat as soon as he gets a small advantage. Also, since he's not finding his home in the jungle, his access to gold and experience is higher. This increased level of income and stats make him stronger relative to the game, and he gets outscaled a lot less quickly. All of these factors combine to create the perfect Baron laner for the Wild Rift, and if you haven't tried him, you should. He's pretty OP. Kennen is one of the new Yordles to come to the Wild Rift, and he's shown up as a pretty solid Baron laner. Kennen has a few strengths that make him excellent against some of the OP champions you find in the Baron lane. Olaf and Darius beat basically every champion they're allowed to attack, but fall flat against champions that can keep them out of range and not engage in their fighting styles. Kennen is great at this. He has his multiple stuns to disengage and can use Lightning Rush to keep them at range if anything happens. He can poke them out from range with shurikens and just generally play the entire game out from a safe distance. The major problem Kennen faces is in situations like scuttle fights, where you can't really just kite and keep your distance. The fighters can just dive in face first and fight over the crab, while Kennen doesn't really contribute as much. To make up for this, Kennen has excellent team fighting with his AoE crowd control potential and great damage. But because he's not the best at early game skirmishes and is super reliant on flash for his team fighting, he's found himself in the A tier. Yasuo has slowly become better as people begin to master the advanced mechanics of the champion, and his potential is being fully unlocked. However, a lot of Yasuo's potential relies on the fact that you can outplay champions with your wind wall and your dashes. In the Baron lane, a lot of champions like Malphite, Darius, and Akali will beat your head in regardless of how well you use your dashes and your wind wall. Yasuo is great against ranged Baron laners like Kennen and the upcoming Teemo. However, when he can be muscled out in the early game, he's not very useful. His lack of good matchups has landed him in the B tier. If you're extremely good at Yasuo, you can get some more mileage out of him in his poor matchups, but for the most part, he's usually outperformed by more conventional Baron laners. Here's our updated tier list for the Baron lane. Before we continue, make sure to join our Wild Rift Discord in the description below and subscribe to keep up with all the updates relating to Wild Rift. Master Yi is potentially one of the scariest champions in the game once he gets rolling, and is known for deleting entire teams in a matter of seconds. Yay. Thankfully, he struggles to get ahead, being one of the weakest early game champions and having a relatively slow clear speed. His ganking power is also minimal, as he doesn't bring much damage to the table and also has no crowd control. Master Yi has no utility to fall back on and doesn't do anything if he can't cut anybody down. His scaling is okay, but most junglers will outpace him, outpressure him, and simply end the game before he is relevant. Master Yi finds himself all the way down in the C tier due to his lack of agency, and as we know, Wild Rift is all about the early game. Amumu is the kind of champion that Master Yi wishes he was. Amumu clears fast and has actual gank potential with his bandage toss and strong burst. Amumu also becomes a team-fighting monster after level 5, with Curse of the Sad Mummy being super straightforward to use and often locking down entire teams. Amumu is a solid S tier pick right now, and helps round out compositions with extra magic damage and crowd control. Unfortunately, Amumu's early game isn't the strongest, and the OP junglers tend to be able to bully him out and contribute far more to early game skirmishes. Lee Sin and Shyvana also gain an extreme amount of individual power when they reach level 5, gaining access to playmaking and extra damage. Amumu's ult is still extremely powerful, however, it's best used to set up your teammates in a group situation. Amumu is wonderful. Reliable engage and being able to create winning team fights for your team is one of the best ways to carry games, but the OP junglers are able to set up more winning situations for their teams. Still an S tier champion and great for all levels of play, and we recommend picking him up if you're new to the jungle or just looking for something easy to play. Wukong has most of the tools you would expect in a good jungler. Quick clear speed, great early game dueling, and powerful crowd control in the form of his Cyclone. Where Wukong falls short is in his early ganks, as he doesn't have any crowd control in his basic abilities. Using Warrior's Trickster's stealth to get in range to Nimbus Strike and start landing the crushing blows is still a decent way to influence lanes, and can often net kills through his sheer damage, but it's still not the best ganking around. He's a pretty powerful pick, and if you haven't tried out the monkey in the jungle, definitely give him a whirl. Here's our updated tier list for the jungle. Before we get into the rest of the video, our question of the day is, which Yordle is your favorite to play as or with on the Wild Rift? Lulu is still super fresh to the game, but speeding up your allies and making them huge is really fun and makes the enemy hate you. Make sure to leave your answer in the comments below. Evelynn was one of the most dominant mid laners on the previous patch, and for good reason. She was typically thought of as a jungler, but her ability to push and roam was unmatched. Her hate spike was fast and safe wave clear, and even if you do harass her, she can dip away into Demon Shade to heal some of it back up. On the Wild Rift, you gain access to your ultimate ability at level 5. This means that Evelynn gets access to her stealth really early, and there's currently no control wards in the game to reveal her as she roams. This makes her obscenely oppressive at controlling the map, and when you're against Evelynn, nowhere is safe. She used to one-shot the mid-wave, and both side lanes have to be scared of getting dove, and your jungler is also freaking out about getting one-shot. She was pretty popular as a mid-lane pick and was definitely overpowered, but her wave clear was gutted on the 2.0 A patch, and she's virtually unplayable as a mid laner now. If you liked Evelynn, stick to the jungle. Akali is still dominating the mid lane and has found her way into the OP tier for this patch. Her all-in threat is always insanely high, and if you misstep once, you will get assassinated by her. She's great in early game skirmishes with her constant 5-point strikes and assassin's marks, and once she reaches level 5, any fight around mid lane is already lost. Perfect execution allows Akali to slice through any squishy with ease, and once she has it unlocked, you should look to avoid her at all costs. Her team fighting is also excellent, with many of the meta carries having few to no tools to deal with her. Seraphine used to be the queen of mid lane with her generous hitboxes, strong damage, and powerful utility. However, her inability to handle assassins in lane has caused her to plummet down the rankings. Akali, Evelynn, Zed, and Fizz all completely maul her, and she has to pay far too much respect to them to actually contribute to the early game. If Seraphine can get to the mid game unscathed, she's still pretty good. But all of the assassins can pretty reliably dive her once they have access to their ultimates, and that's not a good feeling. She's found her home in the B tier for now, but if the assassins become weaker, she may rise up once again. Here's our updated tier list for the mid lane. Miss Fortune has found herself rising to dominance in the ADC role. She's great in the early game and isn't as tricky to play as Draven. Her Love Tap and Double Up are extremely powerful trading tools in the early game, and all short trades taken by Miss Fortune are won by Miss Fortune. Using Strut in lane and then Love Tapping every minion is a great way to guarantee priority, and often gives Miss Fortune the opportunity to rotate to any fight first. Miss Fortune also has one of the best damaging ults in the game. Bullet Time allows Miss Fortune to safely DPS from an insane range, which is extremely useful against all these scary assassins roaming from the mid lane. Her kit is very well suited to the Wild Rift and is often the best at influencing the early game, which we know wins you the most games. She did lose some of her trading power and pushing potential in the 2.0 A patch, however, her core strengths are still there and she is effectively still the same. Ashe is still a trusty, straightforward, and reliable marksman that will get the job done in almost any game. Her ultimate, Enchanted Crystal Arrow, is great for engaging fights and can help round out team comps without reliable crowd control. However, both Miss Fortune and Draven have far better early games and contribute far more to early all-ins and fights in the river. On the Wild Rift, agency is king. Being able to contribute to early fights is the most valuable thing of all, and unfortunately for Ashe, she isn't the best at that. She still slots into the S tier, however, she's not as great as the OPs. Still a powerful pick and great for most games, but if you really want to take your ADC gameplay to the next level, you should pick up the OPs. For similar reasons, Vayne is pretty awful right now. She's even below Ziggs, which should say enough on its own. Win early equals win game. Vayne does not win early. Her damage is low, her range is low, and her crowd control is extremely conditional. Basically every dragon laners, including Ziggs, outperforms her in lane, and she's just extremely weak right now. Wild Rift games are won around her, and she doesn't have much control over whether she's on the winning team or the losing team. She's pretty fun, but that doesn't make for her pitiful early game. She's the sole resident of C tier for ADCs. Here's the rest of our updated tier list for ADC. Alistar has slowly been rising in priority, and now is one of the best supports on the patch. The Wild Rift meta has completely shifted towards assassins mid laners, and that makes enchanters more tricky to play, as they tend to get one-shot very easily. Alistar, on the other hand, becomes extremely tanky with Unbreakable Will. He also has access to reliable crowd control with his Headbutt into Pulverize combo, and is great for keeping pesky assassins away from his carries. His reliable crowd control is also invaluable in the early game, and can be used to set up ganks or contribute to any skirmish. His damage in the early game is also not to be ignored, and often one misstep against an Alistar lane will leave you crowd controlled and one-shot. Lulu is very new to the Wild Rift, but her kit is extremely powerful and especially useful in the assassin-laden meta that currently runs the Rift. Her Whimsy and Wild Growth are great tools at denying entry to assassins and bruisers, and her ability to power up an ally and help them carry is unmatched. Her trading in lane is also pretty good, and while she's relatively squishy and prone to getting all in, she can use Whimsy and Glitter Lance to slow down or completely stop most attempts to kill her. Using Whimsy and Wild Growth to their full potential is pretty hard, and as the level of Lulu play increases, she may climb the tier list. In the meantime, try her out, she's pretty good and a solid S tier pick. Janna is far less new to the Wild Rift, but she's strong for many of the same reasons that Lulu is. Her Tornado and Monsoon are invaluable at stopping engages, and if you can deny the assassin their first round of burst, often they won't be able to finish off the kill at all. She's also wonderful in lane, with Zephyr Harass making it hard to counter-engage on her since you're slowed. Her shield, Eye of the Storm, also increases attack damage, so if you go past the ADC to get to Janna, the ADC is going to be dealing some serious DPS. Similar to Lulu, she's pretty squishy, so if she gets tagged by any crowd control, she likely dies. But if she can avoid that, her toolset for denying engage is extremely powerful. Janna is hard to play, but very overpowered in the right hands. Here's our updated tier list for support.
That wraps up our updated tier list for patch 2.0a, with all the new yordles that have been released so far. Remember, this tier list is meant to encompass all levels of play, so you might find that it's not exactly perfect for your level of play, but it should give you a general indicator of what is good and what you should be looking to play if you want to climb. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Make sure you subscribe, like, hit the notification bell, do some push-ups, I don't know, have a good day. But I like you, and you look nice.